Welcome to episode 3 of the Half Hour, which marks the last part of our two-part series with His Excellency the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade in the Kingdom of Eswatini, Senator Manqoba Khumalo. Filmed at Bush Baby Lodge, Engonyeni, Sitfogodvo. Hosted by PhD, Pila Dlamini. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for notifications. The Half Hour. On the record, for the record.
Wow, that is such a mouthful. It's such an interesting thing to hear it from you, because from outside you could think you understand the transition and what it means,
Sure.
and also the dynamics of your job now in terms of making this country the destination for investments.
Sure.
I read, quite a detail, the roadmap, the economic roadmap 2023 that the cabinet had, and all the plans that you had, and it's quite interesting as well to see, for me as a layman, how all of the things tie in,
Right.
the different ministries and
Right.
all of that.
Right.
But my research has told me something interesting about you,
Okay.
that you prefer to get down and dirty. I mean, I spoke to a person that said to me, the minister just went to a site. He's wearing boots and he's wearing a vest and he wants to go in there. And obviously we've seen you also in the newspapers going into shops, doing your own research as opposed to sending people and hearing from people that know there's price fixing going on now. But you actually want to be down and dirty. What's the reason for all of that?
Wow. I mean, a few things. I mean, we were speaking about the transition,
Yes.
and mostly I just addressed maybe the professional part of it. But
Yes.
if I were to address the work part of it, I would say it has been very difficult for me. And it's a roundabout way of answering your question, right?
Yes.
It has been difficult for me because I have been totally schooled in a particular way of doing work.
Yes.
Since the day I stepped into Coke, and that's way back in 1996, up until 2018 November, when I had to join government,
Yes.
just for tidiness sake, let's say 2019.
Mm.
There's a particular philosophy of what work is, how work is done,
Mhm.
and what a good job is.
Yes. Yes.
It has been very difficult for me to number one, translate everything that I've been taught to the environment that I now find myself in. Number two, to redefine all of that. And most importantly, I don't think I want to redefine what my professional experience has taught me those three things to be. So I don't think my job is to go to an office and go to parliament and go to a cabinet meeting and make a speech and produce a document and then move on.
Yeah.
My job is to improve something.
Yes.
So if I'm looking at, for example, SMEs, small, medium enterprises, I want to understand what is our baseline right now in terms of their access to finance,
Yes.
in terms of their productivity, in terms of the markets that they have,
Yes.
etc. And then in 5 years, I have a vision of where I want that to be. So there is no better way of doing that than to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty.
Definitely.
Because I don't believe you can change that which you don't understand.
Certainly.
And I don't believe you can understand something before you've been involved in it.
Wow.
So, book knowledge is very different from practical knowledge, totally. So if an investor calls me or the Investment Promotion Authority that reports into me says, we are speaking to an investor X, the amount of time I invest speaking to that investor
Yeah.
engaging with him, understanding their business model, understanding what they really want is incredible. And what I'm finding is that it makes a difference, because when you then start thinking of a solution, you are not just following a textbook type approach, but you are very specific in your offering to the needs of that particular investor. And I think that makes a fantastic difference, because it really is going to cause investors that may have struggled in the past to come to Eswatini to say, you know, they get us, they understand us.
Yes.
You know, and we've had a number of testimonials already on that, and
Wow.
that's one of the things, for example, that makes me want to get involved. So if it's a construction site and it's a project under my ministry, I don't want to go to Parliament and explain whether the project is on track or off track and the reasons it may not be. You will know, for example, that these days I'm acting Minister of ICT.
Yes.
So if I hear there's an issue at our local television station, I go there.
Yeah.
I go to the studios, I go to the boardroom, I speak to the staff, I call the board, we have a conversation. It is important that you understand
Yes.
whatever it is you're trying to change.
Wow.
And that's my attitude. So I really then give it everything I have. And secondly, I don't believe that, this may sound a bit controversial, but it's true. It is very rare to ask the person who caused a problem to solve it.
You must find other people to give you the solutions.
It's important that when you come in, you introduce new thinking.
Certainly.
That's what I mean.
Certainly.
Because if you then just sit back and you find this person in a particular situation, and you're not able to exert your new thinking to that situation, you just allow the same person to think the same way, act the same way, but somehow you're hoping for different
For a
results.
different solution.
Other
Yeah.
people have suggested what that is, right?
Certainly.
So you don't want to do that. You may not necessarily have to change the person, but you can exert your own influence so that the person then is motivated to think differently. Because now there's a new person who has come up with a new way of doing things, a new passion even,
Yes.
just that, just a new passion, and has seen different things, and has been to different jurisdictions and understood how the world works from different contexts.
Certainly.
That in itself makes a difference. So why is that important? So when I walk into my Department of Industry and I want them to do something else, I have to then avail myself, because if I don't avail myself to them and I expect them to do things differently, they probably won't.
Certainly.
And it's not a fault of their own, because the results that you produce are a function of a few things. They're a function of your capabilities, they're a function of your experiences, and they're a function of what you've seen. So if these people have exhausted all of these things, and you come in, but your attitude is to just say, you do what you do what you've always done, but I'm expecting different results, that leads to frustration.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Because there's a lack of understanding. You wanted to do certain things, but we don't know how to get there,
Right.
or how to even do it.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective, and so many learnings, from just that response.
Sure.
And that leads me to want to find out how we can transfer so much knowledge. I want to believe that in your journey, you've probably had some people that have added value to your life, either as mentors and or friends,
Right.
or just leaders,
Right.
while you were in the field. And
Right.
now here you are, leading a portfolio and another one, obviously for the time being, but doing a great job as far as we can see. And as I'm speaking to you now and hearing some of the things that are your strategies, clearly something that we could use also as young people coming up.
Right.
What are the best ways, from your perspective, of transferring such knowledge, to other people coming up?
First of all, I think such opportunities where we can sit down and just talk about, our experiences, and what has worked, what hasn't worked. I think that in itself is a significant part of knowledge transfer.
Yes.
Secondly, I think we have to start being intentional with mentoring programs.
Okay.
I think as a country, this is one area that is very, very weak, where you know uh, the, the the design of um, uh, mentorship uh, as a culture is very, very, very weak, and it's weak even at a family level. In
Oh, yes.
Eswatini, you find a person who owns a transportation industry, maybe buses and
Yes.
and combis and whatever, and when the father passes away,
Yeah.
uh, the children have no clue how to run this business,
Yep.
and they might be 40, 50 years old when he passes away, but
Mm.
within 2 years that business wraps
It
up,
does.
and because the mentorship element is not natural for us as Emaswati. So I think we not only need to be having such forums and such engagements, but we also need to be thinking about how we have intentional mentoring sessions where
Yes.
maybe some of the leading CEOs in the country, the banking industry,
Yes.
can be having sessions with young people in the country who are looking to become the next banking CEO,
Definitely. Definitely.
entrepreneurs that have distinguished themselves should be having sessions with entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs in the country, etc. So it is something that we've been discussing with the Ministry of Sports, Youth and Culture,
Okay.
because it best sits under that, because
Yes.
it has to be cross-cutting, across many disciplines. And I did have a meeting um, with the Sports Youth Council CEO at some stage, and we spoke about this. How do we start creating those platforms
Yes.
intentionally, where on a Sunday afternoon we've all gone to church, and it's 3 o'clock, and hopefully Manchester United is not playing on that day. We then, have a semi-formal seating, and you have some of the brilliant minds in the country, people like Vuselelo Fagutse, Treasure
Yes.
Mapanga,
Yes.
Nelson Mabuza, speaking to
Definitely.
young people and saying,
Yep.
this is how you should shape your lives for leadership. That void is a problem in the country, because
Definitely.
we don't have a transference of systematic thinking. We don't have. I spoke in some setting not too long ago and said one of the biggest opportunities I see in government is we don't have an operating philosophy.
Wow.
What is our operating philosophy?
Yes.
At Coke, there's an operating philosophy,
Yeah.
and if you don't subscribe to it, the system has a way to just put you aside, because
Certainly.
if you don't subscribe to it, then we're not going to get to where we want
Of
to get.
course.
And the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has to have the same thing
Yes.
about entrepreneurship. And young people have to understand what is the country's philosophy on entrepreneurship.
Definitely.
It is mostly written in plans that are sitting in somebody's office, but never
Execution.
been implemented.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And you need to improve on the execution part. I really love that, and I'm quite inspired that you've already had a conversation around that, because I'm sitting here now and I'm getting all this wealth of knowledge. But even I cannot have all the right questions to ask you to get the information out of you.
Sure.
And I can only imagine if it was 5, 6 of us here sitting, different minds,
Of
the
course.
questions that would come to you, and then the responses we would get, and obviously gain some value,
Hopefully.
from you. And as a parting shot,
Sure.
we are currently under the most turbulent times in at least my short lifetime, COVID-19.
Right.
And we spoke earlier about the economic roadmap that your cabinet actually introduced to the country a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And I'm pretty sure as part of the plan, COVID was not there. And now as you're doing your great job and investors are coming in and are starting to see, a bit of a change in the country's economy, all of a sudden the whole world goes into a shutdown,
Right.
not just Eswatini,
Right.
which means our plans as well have had to either be redirected, paused, or some of them maybe even tanked. I might not know. What has that done to your portfolio, and what do you think the journey is, going forward and in terms of recovery as well?
Yeah. It has been a really, really unfortunate occurrence globally, as you say. COVID-19 has been. Um, it has exposed a lot of things globally as well, in terms of just our preparedness
Yep.
as governments.
Yes.
In in a sense, it has also equalized the world, because for the first time we are dealing with the same problem, but we are equally inept at dealing with it. It doesn't matter whether your GDP is in the trillions or um, tens of billions of dollars. It doesn't matter whether your health system is said to be world class or third world. It doesn't matter. So it is just an opportunity, though, for us to really not waste this crisis,
Yeah.
because we can reset. And we are, to answer your question, in the process of resetting as
Okay.
the government. His Majesty, in one of the meetings that I have been part of, said something very profound as it relates to COVID-19. He said, this is a chance for us to be self-sufficient in
Yes.
terms of food,
Mm.
because the borders will close,
Mm.
countries naturally will take care of themselves before
Yes.
they take care of you,
Mm-hmm.
and we then need to be looking at how we can fast track
Yes.
the whole food sufficiency agenda.
Mm.
And that's what we are busy with, actually. Tomorrow I'm in a meeting where we are reviewing progress on our economic recovery strategy
Okay.
post-COVID-19.
Oh, okay.
And all the elements within that are the things that we are resetting.
Okay.
We are also looking at our health system.
Okay.
Um, you know that in Eswatini, for certain health services, we have a fund, I think it's called Palala Fund,
Yes, the Palala
where
Fund.
we send people to countries outside the country, because we know that our health system is inadequate for certain health services. We cannot do that at will now. I was with one of our doctors, local doctors, 3 weekends ago, and he was saying he had to take a patient who was critically ill, not from COVID-19, but from other ailments,
Ailments. Yes.
to Pretoria. He says they took more than 10 hours to get to Pretoria, and it took them more than 4 weeks to get through the process of getting the approval to get to Pretoria. And that tells us that we have to be self-sufficient in terms of health.
True.
We have to have employment levels very high, because what COVID-19 has done is to expose our weaknesses as a government,
Yes.
in terms of saying, once you say to people, don't go to work for a week, for a couple of weeks, what then happens is people go hungry.
Yes.
They literally
Yes.
don't have reserves. They don't have money, saved in the bank, etc. So we are resetting all that. So we are going back to what we've said in the strategic roadmap, that we want this to be a private sector led growth. So one of the things that I'm working on with Business Eswatini, the Investment Promotion Authority, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Economic Planning, the Ministry of Public Works and Transport, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of ICT, basically all ministries that are driving our key sectors in the strategic roadmap, is to say, what are the private sector projects that we need to be bringing forward and accelerating. So we are now at a point where a number of companies have actually committed up to 20 billion emalangeni plus, to say as soon as we can, in other words, when the borders and international travel gets unblocked, we are going to start working on these projects. And what that means is we will be creating jobs. We want to see if we can create up to 30,000 jobs in the next 2 years.
Wow.
And that is a commitment that has been driven by His Majesty's challenge to us to say, don't waste this crisis. And the Prime Minister then has tasked us as a team to say, go and put together an economic recovery strategy that we will then be obviously, testing and validating with our strategic partners as a country, with our social partners locally, with our international partners and funders. But the key, enabler for this is it can't be government funded, because I've told you that government is basically at the threshold of its own expenditure before things capsize. We want to get to a position where a lot of the big jobs will be created by the private sector. And I'm very happy to say the private sector is stepping up. And we will be presenting this plan very soon to the nation.
Wow. Mr. Khumalo, I could speak to you the whole day. I could literally sit here the whole day and have a conversation with you, because there's so much wealth that comes out of you. And I know you're a busy man. I probably could afford that, but you couldn't, So unfortunately, I have to say thank you, for your time. I'd love for us to speak more. And from what you just said now, as your conclusion, we are really looking forward to the plans that you have, for this country with your cabinet. I think we have already seen over the past year and a half the great work that you've done. And we know that, as His Majesty obviously has said, that this particular cabinet will not waste this crisis. And we're only looking forward to what's coming up. And we trust and believe that also the country is ready for it. And there's a lot of young people that are yearning for all of the change that is coming forth, hardworking, creative, and passionate, that will be there in waiting for all that is being provided for us. So thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us and having water with us. Hopefully next time we'll have coffee and we'll have more time. We'll have a Coke, definitely. You will definitely have a Coke, and we really appreciate this. We will keep our ear on the ground, and we'll keep behind you, rallying behind you, and supporting the initiative that you're doing. We know that amidst any noise, there's always silence in between where the real work is happening, and we appreciate that awesome work is being done by you and your ministry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everything that you do. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. We shall.
The Half Hour. On the record, for the record.